Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl, and this week I'm in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania talking with Becky Ryman of Wallenpaupack Brewing Company. It's coming up on 4 years in operation now, and they're at a crossroads, looking to grow, but trying to figure out the best path forward. From paying employees well and staff retention to managing the owner and brewer relationship, we get into the nuts and bolts of the business. But first, I'm going to ask you to check out beeredge.com, where you can listen to episodes of this show, as well as the Beer Edge podcast with Andy Crouch. He's doing some really fascinating interviews with people behind important beer coverage, and these chats go beyond the headlines. I think you'll enjoy them. And we also have a merch page there where you can stock up on all of your Defend Pilsner and Camp Rauch beer needs. We're also on the air through support of our advertisers, and if you'd like to learn more about that, please reach out to Liz Melby. She's on email at liz@beeredge.com. And speaking of that, thanks to NZ Hops, the cooperative of master hop growers. They are a passionate collective of farms dedicated to innovation and sustainability. Leading the charge in sustainable farm practices, some NZ Hop farms have over 5 generations of knowledge that inform their composting program used by growers to promote healthy, regenerative growth of hops year upon year. This creates high-quality soil, a critical component of healthy growing conditions. At NZ Hops, they feel that sustainability is not only being a steward for the land, but for our future. We're in it together. Join the conversation at nzhops.co.nz or on LinkedIn, Instagram, or on Twitter. And we're also brought to you by Dragon's Milk. 20 years ago, New Holland Brewing Company embarked on a journey into the unknown, brewing the first batch of Dragon's Milk bourbon barrel-aged stout. What started as a single barrel in the back of the brewery has transformed into the best-selling American-made stout today, pairing rich notes of chocolate and coffee from roasted malts with deep tones of vanilla and oak from its time in bourbon barrels. Each bottle of Dragon's Milk is delicious in its adventure, waiting to be opened. Find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. So 4 years ago now, I was working on the Drink Beer, Think Beer book, and I needed some quiet time away. So I decamped to my wife's family house in the Poconos. And as I was pulling out of the grocery store, stocked with supplies, I saw a newly constructed building where an Arby's had once stood. And through the window, it was clear that fermenters were standing tall. Hopeful and intrigued, I soon found out that it was the soon-to-open Wallenpaupack Brewing Company, and I was introduced to Becky Ryman. She founded the brewery with her brother, and in the last 4 years has grown the business, serving an area that was underserved and focusing on being a good employer that puts the ideals of craft beer first. Back up in the area now, again for a few days of downtime, I sat in the brewery's fenced-in patio with Becky earlier this week. It was Sunday morning, and brunch service had just begun. We talk about worry and success, difficulties ahead, and why beer, not seltzer, is still the focus. Here's our conversation. So I was saying before we started, I love coming up here because it gets me out of my beer bubble. I get to go to package stores, and I see what is really being sold in America right now. And it's all variations on American Light Lager, or these days, endless choice in hard seltzer, or budget brands that I've never heard of, but that I see people walk out in with 30 packs under their arms, 90 at a time. And then I get to come here again, which I have been for the last 4 years, and I get to see what a good craft brewery is doing in a region that is largely underserved by craft, and has been for a long time. There are some other breweries in the area, but one of your size and with your focus. How have you been received in what I guess was really sort of like a craft desert?
Yeah, so the reception's been amazing for us. I think that's, a lot of our success is attributable to the fact that we are one of none in a sense. Northeast PA was very deprived, I think, of good craft choices prior to us coming on the scene. And, the scale we built on with the 20-barrel brew house right out the gate, enabled us to get out to the market pretty quickly, get our product in cans, and kind of introduce people to local craft. You had some of your bigger craft options, in the area and in bars in some of these stores, but people having a brand they can call their own, a brand they've learned to trust, which is pretty cool. They'll buy anything as long as it's branded Wallenpaupack because they know we make a good product. Has been really awesome. And I think, starting out with a beer like Cream Ale and introducing that to a market that's used to those brands like you spoke about, and then really using that as a conversion beer has enabled us to just make huge headway in an area where there really was, no local craft.
Are you finding it's, because this is a pretty big tourist area, although there are locals here, are the locals coming back more and more, or is this more tourist dependent?
So our locals have been extremely supportive, especially last year through COVID. I mean, they were stable for us. That was a very solid base that we had, and they do come back. Not so much in the summer. I guess they kind of lose a little bit of interest, I think, because we do get so busy with the tourist season. But throughout the year, they support our beer dinners and any kind of events we have going on. They do come in and support us. And then as far as the tourists go, it's fascinating because we've kind of spawned market demand in other areas that, we weren't really prepared for. We get a lot of requests for beer from bars in Long Island and a lot of places in New York. And that's a lot of the population in the
that
summer.
come here this time of year.
Yeah. So we've got kind of this local following, but then we also have this following that's developed in other areas that are really densely populated, which has been really fascinating for us to watch.
But is that even something that you can capitalize on?
It is. I mean, we've got wholesalers, reaching out to us from those areas saying, our base actually is looking for your product. Can you supply it? So that's sort of where we're at right now, is trying to decide, are we ready to make that leap to be that, almost regional sized brewery and kind of get into other areas in other states? Or are we kind of happy settling out where we are, keeping our wholesale distribution more local? And what does that entail? That's kind of...
So if you can, I'd love to get into that, because I'm really curious about where the pros and cons lie for a brewery like yours, where if people come here, I think about Fat Tire quite a bit from New Belgium. I loved going out to Denver and to the states where I could get it because it was special. Mm-hmm. And then when it came to New Jersey, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I went out to a pub, I had a pint of it, I was like, that's cool, and I don't think I've had it since.
Yep.
But there was something about going to Denver, going to Colorado, and drinking that beer. Does that play into your concern? If the people who come here from Long Island can get it where they live now, is it as special? Are they going to buy as much as they're...
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it does. Because, even... It's, the how big do we want to grow and how big do we want to go? So, even the quantities and availability we've discussed with the wholesalers in New York that we could get them, it's not vast quantities. It's not probably, New Belgium caliber.
Well, sure.
So I think it'll still have a uniqueness to it in the fact that it will be a scarce availability kind of a product. But I think it does kind of, elicit that good vibe of I had this when I was up at the lake. I was on vacation. I was enjoying myself, much like Cape May does. I kind of am, always impressed with how, they do their marketing so that, people are recalling their experience at the shore, and we've kind of become that, I think, for these consumers that go back, from our tourist destination, go home, and, if they could enjoy our product there and reconnect that with their experience at the lake, I think that'd be a really neat offering.
So where do you then start in the process of finding out if it is actually feasible for the long term?
Yeah, so we obviously started our brewery really large, right? We built for capacity, we built for expansion, and that was just, kind of a unique opportunity that we had at the time. This isn't, I tell my staff a lot of time, this isn't real life. Most breweries don't start out this way, but, we had the resources, I had the business backing and the wherewithal to be able to do what we did. But now we're kind of to that point where we grew way faster than I had planned or ever hoped and imagined, which is a great problem, right? Good problems, luxury problem. But now it's, we're in Hawley still, and I have to remember that sometimes because, the infrastructure that's here, the, sewer availability and some of the other things aren't that fantastic, you know. So we're kind of looking at, what do we really want to be when we grow up, and do we expand in a different direction? Do we go out and, greenfield our own new facility and put in a 50-barrel system or something of that caliber? Or what can we do here on site? and really evaluate our capacity and see if there's ways we can, integrate things that'll allow us to keep growing. So it's literally right where we are right now, making those decisions, because coming into our winter season, we're not as busy.
Yeah.
So if we're going to retool and gear up, that's the time to do it. So we're still leaning toward using this facility, and I think we've been doing a lot of really good research to show we can still produce more product here, and there are some things we could retool on our brew house that would make it more efficient and get some larger batches out. So that's sort of where we're headed right now.
When you first started, I remember coming here early on and you were saying, okay, this is Yuengling country, and we want to be the craft choice for the Yuengling drinkers. People are going to come in with their kids, or they're just going to come in because they see beer, and they're going to ask for a lager, they're going to ask for a Yuengling, and you wanted to give them something similar to that so that they didn't just turn on their heel and walk out the door. Did that happen?
It did. So I think one of my favorite stories is that we used to have this local couple that would come in all the time. And, the husband would always kind of gravitate toward our cream ale or whatever lager we had on draft at the time. And, about a couple months ago, they had come in, and the wife said to me, she goes, I have this great story I have to tell you. She goes, we've been coming here for our date night for 2 years now. It's been a great place for us. And when we started coming, my husband was very much the cream ale drinker, and she goes, but then one day one of your bartenders suggested, why don't you try the pale ale, step out of your comfort zone. And then, after that, now it's the largemouth, and now he's drinking our double IPAs. And she's like, I'm like, who am I married to? Our date night started out so simple, and you were this just, lager drinker. And now you've evolved into this, craft beer fan, and he appreciates the styles. So, I think it's been cool that we've been able to keep some of those classic styles on, but we've also been able to dabble in some of the more trendy styles and, the IPAs and do those things. And people have appreciated that, and people have grown. I think we've actually, done lupulin shifts on people's palates, which is super cool, to be able to do that in an area that was primarily, very Yuengling heavy and very, Busch heavy and Coors Light and, all the big brands.
I sort of jumped ahead because I want to go back to when you started and the production and the size and scope of the brewery. You mentioned having the resources and the business background and everything else like that, but you also have family that owns a brewery in Florida that you guys learned a lot of what not to do.
Yeah, that's true. So my cousin Maurice owns Marker 48 in Brooksville, Florida. And, early on, my goal was to start my own business. I'm a CPA by background. It was something I really wanted to do, but I wanted to do something I'd enjoy, something that'd be fun to come to every day. I have background in manufacturing, so the brewery thing was very easy for me to actually step into. And, one of the pieces of advice he gave me early on was, go with the 20-barrel brew house, because he started on a 7, and he was like, if you're eating Cheerios for a while, it'll be okay. I get it's a big dollar amount to spend. But, you don't know what you don't know. And much like him, he was the first in his county to start a brewery, and he and his wife fought very hard to make that happen. And, instantly successful. They just transformed their community and their community's views on craft. And, he saw what we were doing and said, he knows the area, and said, you guys have the opportunity to do the same. So, to his credit, he definitely, pushed us in that direction, and it was the right decision. I'm grateful I had that advice early on.
Was there anything else, though, that you saw? If starting with a 7, is tough. Like, I'm talking to people now who are like, I'm going to get into it, and I'm going to be brewing a barrel and a half at a time. And I'm saying, like, professionally, like, no,
Yeah.
like, don't. It's going to be more heartache and hurt than you think it's going to be.
Yep. It's going to a lot of breweries too. So I think we've talked before. I spent a lot of time in Asheville and in places where, I could go see those 1.5 barrel breweries, but I could also see Sierra Nevada and, kind of gauge like, where do I want to be in that and what makes sense, from a business perspective. Am I getting into this to make money, or am I getting into this to, be a great craft brewery? Yeah. All of those things, you don't want to be.
You have to do both though, right?
You do. Yeah. Like, and it's kind of like I mentioned in our emails, like, it's brewery hat hat and business hat for me constantly. Yeah, we can make great beer and we can do awesome things, but at the end of the day, like, we have to be sustainable. I have 52 employees right now that I'm responsible to sign their paychecks for every week. Yeah, isn't that crazy?
That really is.
Yeah, 50. We've grown tremendously. We're actually now a big employer in this area, which is so cool. But yeah, like, you want to have that grounding every day to come in and say, like, yeah, I'm responsible for this group of people. And, starting out with a 20 barrel brew house was daunting, and the nice thing, the advice my cousin gave me too was you can always brew down. Just because you have a 20 barrel brew house doesn't mean you have to make a 20 barrel batch.
Yeah.
And early on, we had all those 10 barrel tanks. You saw them sitting in there. They're gone. They're sold. And now they're replaced with 20s and 40s, and we're talking about 60s. And you can brew up and you can brew down. And I think that's something people take for granted. If you can afford to go the bigger route, yeah, you don't have to make all the beer at once and fill all your fermenters. Grow your brand, get a system that's going to produce good quality beer for you, get a good brewer, and go from there. I think that's lost in translation a lot, that people don't understand you can brew down. It's okay.
The idea of signing paychecks for 52 employees has got to feel good in a lot of ways, but it has to bring a ton of worry. Yeah,
absolutely.
What are you worried about right now?
So right now, I think just in the craft sphere, right, there's a lot of threats of entrance to market, right, and like RTDs and cannabis. And I think the landscape of like craft right now is much different than it was 4 years ago. Like those weren't thoughts on my mind, know? So again, as a business owner, like, I have to wear that hat and kind of just separate out like the craft love component for a second. I love what we do. I love that we make amazing craft beer. But I also have to look at a business and like the future of those people, my future, my future of my investment, and consider those things, right? And it's like, do you embrace it? Do you fight it? I was recently appointed to the board for the State Guild for Pennsylvania, which is, a huge honor and privilege. And there's just the work that group is doing, and try to keep craft relevant and fight for our equity in Pennsylvania it's amazing. And I'm happy to be a part of that, because that's something I know I can now help affect that affects the future of my business, and also the future of my 52 employees. To keep us relevant and to keep us have craft have their space and not be losing out to all these competitive, products.
What's interesting, though, is it's this argument that's been around for a long time of, protect craft or support craft or things like that. And I'm not going to get into the quality argument, because that's a whole other thing. And you guys have always made good beer, and I've enjoyed it. But one of the largest breweries in the state of Pennsylvania is Boston Beer Company, which, if recent numbers that have been reported out by a few folks are to be believed, the Sam Adams line of beer is like less than 10% of their output right now. They're putting everything into Truly and Twisted Tea and things like that. So, and you can't call those things craft, and it's what the consumers want.
Yeah.
How do you reconcile that, where you have fellow members who are essentially putting the idea of craft at stake, and having been ones that actually built up what craft could be or aspired to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. One, I think it shows the pressure that's on us as brewers right now, right? Because you have these emerging, categories basically, but with the seltzers and the flavored malt beverage, you're still under the craft bubble, as far as like taxation and all of those things goes. Like they're still within that category. So yeah, you can argue, right? Is it actually beer? Is it craft? I personally don't think it is. Like we've dabbled in seltzers. We haven't hung our hat on that. We're trying to still stick very beer focused. But it's, it begs the question though. And it's, what makes me think every day, like they're going that direction. So, what actually is the fate of that? And it goes back to the business decision. At the end of the day, they're still a business, and I fully understand that. So if they're seeing, footing being lost in craft, that's a signal to the rest of us to see what they're doing and the direction they're going. And it's something that we have to start to contemplate, especially as we start to grow. Like, what space are we going to grow into?
Is there a drumbeat from customers that walk through that want those alternative beverages?
There is. We have a ton of people walking in every day asking for seltzer, and seltzer in a can. And we did a seltzer once, and why didn't you bring it back? And, we focused our tank space and our resources on making ales and lagers. That's kind of what we wanted to do. And we're keeping that space. It's fine. I mean, we're doing well with it. We haven't been forced into offering those products. We have a batch of hard seltzer on that we just tapped the other day, our first one this summer, and it's almost over, but we just put it on.
Summer's almost over, or the tank is almost
Summer's
empty?
almost over.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but we're just getting it out now. It wasn't a priority for us this year. We had plenty of space and time to do our regular beers and plenty of demand for it. So, it's starting, I think, to become something. But it's the gluten-free crowd, the health-conscious crowd. We're getting some pressure from them. We tried to combat it a little bit with our local IPA offering. For more of the health-conscious crowd, and that was pretty successful for us. So that's something we're looking to bring on more year-round. But as far as the seltzer, it's for us right now, I don't think it's something that we want to bring on full time or start to can.
How come?
I think we're content with the space and the demand we have for just the ales and lagers right now. And we're still growing those. We're still adding to our hazy IPA series, and we're doing this exploration into these historical beers that Logan recently launched. And so we're still finding other things to keep us interested, and I think keep our crowd interested, so it hasn't been a pressure point for us yet, because we're still able to offer fruit beers, and we're putting out our cucumber beer soon, and just interesting other products that people are still buying. So we haven't lost that space yet. We haven't lost that demand.
How important though is it to have, I mean, if you put a seltzer on, it's going to sell. And people are going to come through. I mean, that's just what the market says it's going to do right now. But you also have to feel good about it. I talk to brewers who are like, yeah, my seltzer sells, and, it's easy to make, and, I die a little bit each time that I make one, but then I look at my bank account and I feel a little bit better that I can survive for another week. It doesn't sound like it's there for you. The passion to make it isn't there, but then also the bottom line isn't dictating that you have to do it.
Yeah, and we've been fortunate in that. So I think, Logan and I, Logan's my brewer, he's got this great relationship with me where we can have serious conversations about, what he's passionate about making, and then I can make it work financially. Just in the sense that, our tap lists, and we haven't had a lot of hazy double IPAs, we dabble in that a little bit. So just we're kind of dabbling in seltzer, and, we've found the way to make the money to support the, business, to do craft, and on our scale we can, and that's, again, something that plays back in my mind as I'm looking to see if we should go to a 50 barrel system or how we do this. What does that capacity then look like? Can I support, that barrelage, being 5,000 plus barrels, doing just ales and lagers? I don't know. That question, I don't know. That's where Logan and I would have to sit down and actually say, do we need to be trendy? Do we need to be seltzer, heavier than we are? Is that, is 20% of our production now seltzers that we can crank and make money on to support what we're passionate about doing? That's a big consideration.
Anything that you put out, though, there has to be, I guess there doesn't have to be. I mean, you can just do it. But would you feel weird putting something out that was just a financial thing?
I think
just solely for financial gain, and not getting any actual personal or professional satisfaction out of it.
I think Logan and I would. I mean, we're the type of people that we did this out of passion. We really did, and I know he would die a little inside if we became that brewery. He really would. And he's he's a phenomenal brewer, and he's very to the style. He likes to experiment. And, there's still those breweries out there that are doing that. And, we respect that. And it'll be a leap for us if we have to do that. I think he'd understand. I think he would, get the bottom line, reasoning. But, I think it would be a hard decision for us to make if we had to do that, because we've been so true to just doing what we do and finding our niche and doing that.
More with Becky Ryman in just a moment, but first, a word of thanks to the companies that help keep Drink Beer, Think Beer on the air. pairing rich notes of chocolate and coffee from roasted malts with deep tones of vanilla and oak from its time in bourbon barrels. Each bottle of Dragon's Milk is a delicious adventure waiting to be opened. Find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. And also check out NZ Hops. At NZ Hops, they feel that sustainability is not only being a steward for the land, but for our future. We're in it together. Join the conversation at nzhops.co.nz or on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter. And now, back to my conversation with Becky Ryman, recorded on location at the Wallenpaupack Brewing Company in Pennsylvania. I've been thinking a lot about the interviews that I've been doing on this show recently, and I've been talking to a lot of brewers. And in some cases, I haven't had an owner on in quite a while. And a lot of times, sometimes the brewers are also the owners, or their employees and things like that who have, good relationships or not. What have you found in the 4 years is the most important thing about having a relationship with a brewer? Because you're a CPA by training, so you obviously have the passion, but you also have the analytical mindset. Whereas brewers a lot of the time just come in with like passion and creativity and no sense for business and, like leave me alone, bean pusher. This may be your place, but this brew house is my domain kind of thing. How have you found a good way for you and Logan to get to the point where you have this relationship? I mean, you're every conversation I've had with you, and it's even showing up on this tape right now, is you speak of him like a peer as opposed to an employee.
Yeah. So early on in like my prior career, someone once told me, you can't do everything. You focus on what you're good at and you hire really good people to help you with the other pieces, and that's kind of been my philosophy from day one. Like I told you before, I've dabbled in home brewing. I know enough to be dangerous. I can,
enough to
spin
create
out
the
a
acetol.
good stout on my on my stovetop. But it's to go run the brew house. I can hang out in there and I can understand what he's doing. But that's his forte. And I respect that, and I think a lot of it comes from respect, just very much like, my executive chef runs my kitchen, my salesman, runs our sales show. And I've just really tried to hire people who have the passion to do what they're doing, but are, coachable enough that, when I sit down with them and say, look, like, I get you want to do this, but, here's where we need to be and like, how do we get there together? And, that's what I've just learned. And, I'm hiring these people that are way more qualified to do those aspects of the business than I could ever be. Like, you'll not find me in the kitchen cooking here, ever.
Yeah.
And it's been a game of respect, and they respect that they have a good place to come to work every day. And, we have top quality equipment and, I'm always willing to give them what they need to be successful. And, they reciprocate that with, doing a good job and being a conscious, cost conserver and helping me with, P&L problems and understanding, like, being when you're, they're buying things and looking at all they're doing, at the end of the day, it is a business. So I respect them for what they do. They respect me for the fact that we have a successful business, and it's just been a great relationship.
When you think about relationships outside of the brewery, like I remember covering the early days of craft where somebody could just pick up the phone and call somebody down the street or, on the other side of the state or whatever and say like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me out? And there was a sense of camaraderie. And I know that's something that's talked about a lot, but I also get the impression that because there are so many more breweries these days and people are trying to beat each other's brains out, just to pay their 52 employees or just to pay their 3 employees or just to keep the lights on, that there's not that same level of, outreach or conversation among, people in the industry. Do you find yourself reaching out to folks outside of beer for insight, for advice, for ways to sort of keep, your own momentum going?
Yeah. So, I've spoken to people within craft, I've had a lot of really, amazing people reach out to me, and just kind of offer advice. People had visited the brewery and just, in conversation, we've come up with some interesting topics and, they've kind of given me their insight on things going on. I've shared mine. And I know like Logan as a brewer, you know, he's very much into reaching out to people and help me solve this problem. You know, I haven't done it too much, I'd say. I kind of like have this myopic view, I think, of like what we're doing. And I'm always just very focused and managing from the P&L outward, more so than like what the industry is doing inward, I guess. Locally, it's about been 50-50 of the breweries, I think, that have reached out to me for advice, which has been interesting. Some, I think, you know, are doing
especially
their thing.
Especially after 4 years in business.
Yeah. They kind of don't want to talk about it or, you know, what they're doing. And I respect that. And then a few others have kind of, you know, extended the invite. And I've, you know, gone over and spoken to them. And they're, you know, having, you know, conflicting opinions within their group about should we can or should we, you know, be a brew pub? Should we still have a kitchen? You know, what should we do? So, I'm always very open and honest. I've had tons of people come in telling me they're going to do what I'm doing and how do I start and all of these things, which, you know, is always interesting.
Is that flattering or frustrating?
It's humbling sometimes, but I think it's frustrating because, you know, a lot of people walk in and I had a guy who was looking to spend his retirement money on opening a very large brewery. And I kind of sat him down and I was like, I get it. Everyone has a dream and I fully respect that. However, you really want to run these finances through. I'm happy to help you do that. And, you know, I'll be an open book because I don't know that getting into this, you know, when you have a very clear retirement in front of you is the right option. You know, it's a lot of sweat equity. It's a lot of passion and it's a lot of, you know, waiting for investment return, you know, and kind of, you know, taking that risk. It's always a risk, right? And especially, like I said, you know, 4 years ago, my conversation with him would have been way different than it is today too, because the market's changing and, you know, that's a consideration as people are looking to get into craft today. You know, what else is going on besides just beer? And yeah, he ultimately didn't do it, which I thought was kind of interesting. But, you know, and I told him, I said, look, if I was 65 and I had, you know, a couple $100,000 in the bank, not sure I'd be spending my time in Hawley in my craft brewery. You know, I might be on an island somewhere, just relaxing at the end of my career. But, you know, to each their own. And
sure.
But yeah.
So we're recording this on a Sunday morning. There's already some people out here in your courtyard. There's the aroma of barbecue wafting through, which is very nice. People are playing cornhole. You're open 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and right before you came to sit down, one of your servers came over and offered me a beer mosa. And I was sort of tickled by that of, you know, one, that you're open for brunch because there's not a ton of breweries that do that. You know, two, that you're offering different things to sort of entice people to get out of their normal beer comfort zone. But also just that the kitchen is open this early and already seemingly doing some good business. What was the idea of opening up with a kitchen? Was that a necessity?
Yeah, I think for the area it was. So I actually read Sam Anslone's book, you know, before I had opened. And one of the things that he pointed out in that book was, you know, look at the area you're opening in and look at what's there, what's needed. You know, you don't build a brewery with a kitchen in an area where there are plenty of kitchens open, right? Because there's no demand for the food product. You may as well just stick to your beer, right? Here, I mean, you know the area. There's
almost nothing.
Yeah, restaurants are, you know, very scarce. So, you know, we saw it as an opportunity to, you know, again, from a business perspective, make some money, have a brew pub. I always like to seek out a brew pub. You know, I like to sit and have a meal and have my flight and enjoy it, you know, in tangent with each other. I think food is such a complementary, you know, product to beer, and, you know, that whole experience is just next level for me. I like to eat and I like to drink.
Yeah.
So it made a lot of sense for us to have a kitchen. And then also, you know, the area just needed it. It needed another spot where people can go eat and have food. So it was a necessity, I think. And so as far as the area, I think our beer can stand alone on its own. I think we could have just become a tap room, you know, in hindsight. But I think the experience we've offered has really made us this like incredible destination in the Poconos and has just given us like that much more leverage to succeed and succeed faster.
How much conversation is there between the kitchen and the brewery?
So there's a decent amount of dialogue that goes on between the two. When we're planning our new menus, we're always looking to make sure we include products that are complementary to beer. Some of our staple products that we always have, how are we, showcasing them in the food realm to complement what our beer offerings are. We've started doing these beer dinners, which have been extremely successful. So there's tons of coordination there. Our brewer will, throw 5 beers at our kitchen, and then they'll work together to come up with these pairings. And that's become an awesome little niche for us, and something our staff actually enjoys. Like, everyone gets involved with that, which is so cool. It's not just our executive chef. It's, all the other chefs talking to the 3 brewers in the brewery, and like the collaborative effort there is just, it's amazing, and people enjoy it. They enjoy it. So, I think just, the relationship the front of house, the kitchen, the brewery has is really special here. I mean, they've come together a lot and, produce this experience. When someone comes in that door, we need them all in coordination. So there's definitely a high degree of like camaraderie and workmanship there that they all put forth, which is pretty cool.
I find myself, again, like coming out of the beer bubble a little bit that I'm normally in, and the idea of a beer dinner, of which I've done, countless in my life, feels like something from 15 years ago, where it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna do it. But there are still, thousands and thousands of people who have never done one before, where it is a fun experience for them. Are you finding that some of the things that maybe craft has moved on from, because it's 40 plus years old now at this point, and beer dinners in the early 2000s were swing a dead cat and hit 12, like was there, are you finding that some of the things from the earlier days in craft like are fresh and new and can apply here because you were none of one?
Absolutely.
What was the phrase you used? It was
one of none.
Yeah.
We really are. We're super unique. And as much as beer dinners have been around and stuff, that was a new experience for me because, living in this area, it's just nothing we've had available to us really, So, wine pairing dinners are huge, but beer dinners, I've felt like just, didn't get their time in the sun up here. So, us doing them, people are finding them and they've never been, they've never heard. So it's just that perk of being in this area that's just so, fresh and ready for craft, and, trends come back around, right? Like we always see that. But offering that experience and the pairings and just the caliber that my staff's able to put them out at, people are really embracing it, which is cool. It's a neat thing.
52 employees. I keep coming back to that just because, for all the years that I've been coming here, I think I've been coming here since before you were even opened.
Correct.
To see that sort of growth. But I also, everywhere that I go, I'm seeing help wanted signs. And the hospitality industry is having a very difficult time, as we're still in this pandemic, getting people to work front of house, back of house. Are you, could you use more staff? Are you behind the 8 ball with 52 or?
So right now, we're fully staffed, and we have applications still walking in the door. So I think that's a testament to a couple of things. A long time ago, I received some great advice again about, how you treat your employees and how that comes back to you. And, my family's owned other businesses, like very entrepreneurial parents. And one thing we've always been known for is, treatment of our staff. And it's hard to offer those things, like great benefits and stuff when you're so small or you're just starting out. But, I set goals for my staff and I said, look, like, we're going to get a 401k plan in place. Like, we're going to have health insurance. We're going to have all these things. I mean, my servers have a 401k plan with the match. They have health insurance, So we've kind of gotten this, I guess, reputation now of being an employer who's able to support their staff in hospitality. And those things are kind of, an anomaly, I think, for most places that are doing hospitality.
Yeah.
But,
I might leave an application as on my way out. Yeah.
But it all comes back, and we have a lot of professional staff now. We have, a marketing team of 3. We've got, sales, 2 salesmen. We have, our brewers. And again, kind of goes back to like, how do you garner respect and the relationship Logan and I have. And a lot of that is, how you treat people. And it's like that across the board with, all of our staff. And, over 50% of our staff have been here. I mean, you probably see familiar faces every time you come for like we're going on 4 years of being open. And, most of them have been here for the long haul, which is awesome. Just to have that retention. It's really something you don't see in hospitality at all anymore. So it's, I know it's hard, and sometimes it's, taking out money from, what my profits would be to support that, but it comes back in the long run. And when you're not retraining people constantly, it's, it goes back to the experience for your customers and, just the quality of your products. If you can keep that consistency, a lot of that is in the people that are producing those things.
When you're saying the profits, though, the margins on restaurants and on the food side of things are always not great.
Correct. Yeah.
And I've been hearing a lot of rumblings, and I know that you mentioned this as well before we started, of food prices these days, and the cost of doing business is getting harder. What does the next couple of months look like?
Yeah, we're in a hard planning phase right now to try to figure that out. Because this summer, just the instability of pricing in things like food and paper products and gloves, just all these random little things that we didn't know that was coming, and it's always different, and it's things that just blow your mind. It's like, well, why are hamburger buns, twice the price this week or whatever it is. But, across the board, just looking at all of those price increases, we do a seasonal menu, which kind of helps. So we're going to actually take this opportunity to roll our menu over in a couple weeks here and try to cost it down, right? And just be better P&L planners. Tighten up some of the other expenses that we have, look to add more of our wholesale and really push the beer. But, still make money in our kitchen. Like at the end of the day, that's got to break even at least for us, if not, make money. So this summer's been kind of a break even, which has been a little tough. We have a great volume of people walking through our doors, but volume, doesn't always translate into margin and profit.
Sure. And there's only so much that you can pass on to the consumer before people are going to say, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to spend $25 on a hamburger.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where we're kind of, looking, because we still want to offer a great experience to our customers, but we can't also have $25 hamburgers, because that's just unrealistic. So we're looking at improvements, within our menu and what we're offering and what's available, and, how we can kind of fine tune all of that. The beer side's been pretty consistent on margin, which has been great. The cost of business there has not really been impacted too much. It's mostly been on the brew pub side.
One of the things that I've always been struck by, and I know every brewery has merch, but you all have done a pretty good job of trying to, or I guess convincing people that they need that T-shirt, they need that glassware as they're leaving. It's you really have this model, especially during the pandemic, of actually exiting through the gift shop. But you're changing things up a lot. It's not just the same old here's our logo on a shirt. You are putting some actual thought into merch.
Yeah.
Where was that born out of?
So one of the local businessmen in the area, actually, when we had first started out, told me, do not take your merch for granted. He's like, you're in a tourist area. He goes, you will sell a ton of merchandise. And he was absolutely 100% correct. We sell a great deal of merchandise here. And it's funny, I'll get a text from my friend who's in Central Park jogging, and she's like, I just saw a guy go by on a bike with your shirt on. How cool is that? And it does, gets your brand out there, which is amazing. And people relate to that. And it goes back to the whole vacation vibe thing. I remember when I was there, we had such a great day at the lake. We had some great beer. It's you're just eliciting those good feelings. And, funny enough, the merch, I think, helps do that, right? It brings you back and makes that connection. And we've actually sold a lot of the same flagship merchandise that we call, our black T-shirts with our logo on them, and they fly. I mean, we haven't been able to keep it in stock this summer. You came in today when we're fully stocked again, but we've been out of shirts for 2 weeks, and that wasn't for not of planning. I mean, it was just the way it flew this year. It was unbelievable.
That's gotta make you twitchy, though.
Yeah.
To be out for
yeah, it was. That was a couple of hard weeks there, but now that it's back, look out. It'll fly again, and there's plenty of backup orders. but yeah, we've branched out into some other merchandise, and even around the holidays, the amount of shipping we do of merchandise that people gift was actually staggering this year. It's been a really good little revenue center for us, and it definitely helps, support everything else. But through COVID, we've learned to kind of work on our flow in this way that, it's an exit through the gift shop theory, and people buy the t-shirt and they also buy the beer to go. Beer to go has become a huge thing for us through the pandemic. Like, people learned to buy at the source, which again, I guess it was a Northeast PA thing where people didn't understand that concept, but they were almost forced to come buy it here when everything else shut down. And that's stuck around, which it's been a good margin hit for us.
And people are just walking in and just buying beer by the case and walking out.
Yeah. We sell lots of beer by the case. We do single cans so people can mix up their 4-packs. We sell the 4-packs, and we do Case of the Mondays. That's been a great promotional thing for us. We're to encourage people to come buy cases.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's clever.
So yeah.
And it works.
It works. Yeah. People will buy their cases on Monday. They plan their beer purchases now, which is kind of neat. The gift shop merch thing has been a great savior for us, I guess, in a sense of like rebounding from COVID.
That's really cool. Mm-hmm. As we start to wrap up, I've been looking for, escapes from reality, and I've been rewatching The Good Place at night, my wife and I sort of had this idea of, I don't know if you know the concept, but there's this, if you've seen the show, but there's a concept of the green door where you can walk through the door and be anywhere with anybody. Mm-hmm. And so if you could walk through the green door after this interview is over and go have a beer anywhere with anybody, and it doesn't have to be a celebrity, alive or dead kind of thing, but just where would you go? Who'd you drink with?
Honestly, I think I'd go have a beer with my cousin Maurice because, I think he and I we're just actually in that same mindset right now. And as much as we we'll text and, he's busy, I'm busy. I think I'd really just, appreciate the opportunity to sit down with him and have a beer. And with COVID, we had all these plans to go see each other and travel, but that hasn't been a thing. So I would love an opportunity to just actually sit down and have a beer and have a very open conversation with him about what's going on in my world and what's going on in his world. He's just been someone I could trust, throughout this whole process. And I'm really kind of just in search of that opportunity right now to have some sound advice from someone like that, and he's just a very smart business mind. And I think the two of us together have, solved a lot of each other's problems. So that right now would be really cathartic and healing for me, I think, to sit down and have a beer with him and kind of regroup on what's happened the last 4 years and where I am and where I can go.
Well, I hope you get to do that soon enough.
I hope so too. Yeah.
Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You might have noticed the world feels a bit weird again. And with everything going on, just a reminder to stay safe and take care of yourself and each other. And you can always reach out with guest or beer suggestions by emailing me directly at John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL, at beeredge.com. And if you're a fan of smoked beers, because of course you are, join us on the This Week in Rauch Beer Facebook page or on Twitter and Instagram at TWRauchBeer. Liz Melby is also standing by on email to answer any and all advertising questions you may have, dear listener. She's at liz@beeredge.com. And speaking of that, thanks to NZ Hops, the cooperative of master hop growers. They are a passionate collective of farms dedicated to innovation and sustainability. Leading the charge in sustainable farm practices, some NZ hop farms have over 5 generations of knowledge that inform their composting program, used by growers to promote healthy, regenerative growth of hops year upon year. This creates high-quality soil, a critical component of healthy growing conditions. At NZ Hops, they feel that sustainability is not only being a steward for the land, but for our future. We're in it together. Join the conversation at nzhops.co.nz or on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter. And we're also brought to you by Dragon's Milk. 20 years ago, New Holland Brewing Company embarked on a journey into the unknown, brewing the first batch of Dragon's Milk bourbon barrel-aged stout. What started as a single barrel in the back of the brewery has transformed into the best-selling American-made stout today. Pairing rich notes of chocolate and coffee from roasted malts with deep tones of vanilla and oak from its time in bourbon barrels, each bottle of Dragon's Milk is a delicious adventure waiting to be opened. Find Dragon's Milk near you at dragonsmilk.com. A reminder, once again, to check out the Beer Edge podcast with Andy Crouch, available where podcasts are found. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday, including a recent episode with Logan Ackerley. He's the head brewer at Wallenpaupack Brewing Company. So if you liked what you heard about the brewery today, you can get a little bit more context by tuning into that episode from earlier this summer. And of course, the BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. Nate Schweber does the music. Jeff Quinn designed the logo. I'm John Holl. New episodes of this show release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.